What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Joey here from the So Wizard podcast, coming at you once again with some more comic book reviews. It's our weekly look in at new releases that I've been checking out. But of course, before we get started with all that, we're going to need you to like, we're going to need you to subscribe, and we're going to need you to hit the bell down below so that you are always aware when So Wizard content is coming at you for your eyes and your ears. Now, we've been doing this for 4 weeks, 5 weeks now. I'm a lapsed comic fan. I've been heading out to the store, picking up a couple books that catch my eye, paying with my own money right out of pocket at our beloved comic book store locally, Comics apostrophe more in Easthampton, Massachusetts. Love those guys. They take care of us every week. And so far, I've been checking out some books, letting you know what I think based strictly on the fact that I'm a lapsed comics fan and I'm paying for these things out of my own pocket. So there's no need to worry. These aren't free comped copies. There's no friends sliding us a book across this counter and saying, hey, check out our cool comic. Straight from me to you, my honest opinion on these books. This week, I've got 2 comics for you, and they are 2 huge releases. So right off the bat, we're just going to start with Amazing Spider-Man #1. Amazing Spider-Man #1, that came out in like the 60s, right? Well, was it a reprint? What's going on here? How can there be a #1? Spider-Man's been around since before I was born. Oh, that's right. Marvel has to reboot the comic every 6 months for some reason, because God forbid you pick up a comic and it's, number 900 something instead of 1. Even though their trades aren't numbered correctly. So if you tried to go and jump in trade-wise, you have no idea what you're supposed to buy and where you're supposed to start. But for some reason, a mythical new reader that doesn't exist is going to walk into the comic book shop and buy this on a given Wednesday. It's supposed to be easier for them, even though when we were all kids and we first got into comics, it was all numbers in the 10s, 20s, 100s, 200s, 300s of books. And that was fine. But nowadays, it's too confusing for people. So we have to start over at #1 all the time. So this should be a great jumping on point for people, of course, because it's a #1. It's what we want for our new readers. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time. The very first comic I ever bought was Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man #68. Bought it off a spinner rack at a convenience store in 1982 when I was a very small boy. And my mom was just happy to keep feeding me books to make sure that I was reading. I wasn't a big reader at the time. I didn't like reading books that kids had or kids' books, board books, any of that stuff. But if put comics in front of me, I'd read them every day, all day until they fell apart. So she's more than happy to feed that habit. So Spider-Man is a very, very special place in my heart as a character. It's my favorite. Amazing was the book I read no matter what. Even when I was maybe about 10, 12 years old, my dad lost his job. My comic book buying habit went from my mom giving me $25, $30 a month to buy books to you can buy 1 comic a month. Pick 1 comic and that's it. You can only get 1. And comics were like 75 cents a pop at the time. So it's not like nowadays, but and Amazing was the book I picked. So I've read it forever. Love the character, love everything about it. Now, got to read the book. So this is our #1 book. I got this variant cover that has Spider-Man and Spider-Kid and Spider-Woman and Spider-Man Noir. And it looks like up here in the top, there's Peter Parker from India, Spider-Man India in there. Not a cardstock cover, but pretty close. So pretty cool. Page quality wise, good. So not your typical Marvel comic as we've seen the past couple weeks. And I just want to get and I got a nice big credits at the end there. Oh, spoiler. There's the last 2 pages. Big spoiler for you. Written by Zeb Wells with art by John Romita and inks by Scott Hanna. Romita Hanna, good stuff, man. I know there's a lot of backlash against John Romita's art for some reason recently. I'm not going to pretend that I've been reading books for a long time since we started again, but I don't have a problem with it. I've always loved him as an artist all the way back to, I think the first interaction I had with him was on Uncanny X-Men back. I can't remember what number it is. I want to say 212. It's a gray cover. Wolverine's got his claw up and it's all the X-Men there. And it's like, don't mess with us. And I remember that issue. And then Yeah, man. And then he had a run on Daredevil that was awesome. Also, with Ninsati. Ooh, somebody's going to correct me on that. But yeah, that was actually a great run. Really overlooked too, because Daredevil's one of those characters where you get on it and then, everybody's like, oh, well, Frank Miller wrote it and then no one else is ever going to come close. But that's a great run on Daredevil. If you have Marvel Unlimited, go jump into that. Reminds me a lot of Tom DeFalco, Ron Friend's Thor, which is a great run on Thor and one of my favorites, actually, very near and dear to my heart. But it came right after Walt Simonson's legitimately like legendary run on the book. So it just got so little play with people and just got kind of rejected at the time by most of the audience that was there for Walt Simonson. And then these guys came along with a completely different take. But when I was reading, I loved that stuff, and I would go back and read it again. Anyway, enough about my past reading comics. We've got an Amazing Spider-Man. This is exciting, right? Number 1, John Romita Jr. art, awesome, with Scott Hanna inking and Zeb Wells writing. Don't know anything about him, but we'll jump into it. And again, this is not a spoiler. There's a lot of big giant pages in here, but look, 6 months later. 6 months later from what? I don't know. I haven't been reading any books, so I don't know. 6 months later from this beginning part right here where Spider-Man's all beat up for some reason. This Gambit book looks actually really cool. If it ever comes out, I'll probably be reviewing that because Chris Claremont and is writing it, and there's a Wally's Portasio cover, which just brings me right back. Wetworks, woo! So I'm look forward to that in the future. Anyway, Spider-Man is all beat up, and then 6 months later, he's talking to a lot of people, and I'm not going to spoil too much of it, but I got to tell you, this is not great. I didn't like this very much at all. Like, my favorite character of all time. Number 1 issue should be a jump on point for new readers. I haven't read in a long time. This should be very exciting. It should be ready to rock and roll. No. Again, I like the art, so I'm not going to shit on the art because I like it. I like the John Romita style, and it looks cool. It takes me right back to reading Spider-Man comics or X-Men comics from back in the day. But the story is just trash, man. I don't understand what's happening. Peter Parker's a jerk for some reason. Everybody's mad at him. They don't really explain why. I guess that might be the mystery, the hook for the book, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's just Peter Parker misery porn, I guess. He's a jerk. Nobody likes him. He has bills. Mary Jane won't talk to him. Hijinks ensue with Tombstone and his roommate. Not Tombstone's roommate. That'd actually be kind of a cool book about just Tombstone and him having a normal roommate trying to handle life. But Peter Parker's current roommate, not really sure, is dating Tombstone's daughter. So there's that. Hijinks ensue again, and yeah, there's like just stuff happens. Peter Parker's a jerk. He ends up calling Mary Jane at some point. I guess they're not together again. And I don't know, man. I didn't really feel it. I wasn't really feeling it, man. I don't want to spoil it in case, this is one of the biggest books of the year in theory for Marvel. So I don't want to spoil it too bad for you. I just wasn't really feeling it, and that's a tough one for me. That's one of my favorite characters. Right now, the only book I'm buying regularly based on these reviews is World's Finest. I would be more than happy to add Amazing to that, but not based on this, and certainly not for $6. $6 comic. Not really much happens other than Peter Parker walks around wallowing in misery. A lot of talking, and it's not a really good jump on point. It feels like just whatever the issue it ended on before this could be the next issue. Like, it doesn't feel like there's this big like start over point or introduction point. Like, hey, you haven't been reading Spider-Man for a while, jump on board. I know there's a free comic book day issue coming out. Maybe that's the jump on point issue, and I should have waited a week and then got that, read it, and got this first. Got that first and then got this. Sorry. But why? Why would that happen? The schedule doesn't work that way. So now I have this book, and it doesn't really make any sense. I tried to let my own biases come in here, but here's an ad for next issue. Mary Jane and Peter still having problems. I've never been a fan of that ever since it started. I am more than happy with them being a couple. I was more than happy with them being married. As a kid, my parents got divorced. I wasn't really interested in reading divorced superheroes. I always thought of them as the couple. They should be together. So I don't understand this like insistence from Marvel that they can't be a couple, that Peter can't progress at all. Like nothing had. It always has to go back to Peter Parker misery porn, the same shtick over and over again. I remember when they broke them up. They had to break them up. They were married. They couldn't have their kid. Then they broke up, and Peter Parker sold his marriage to Mephisto to save Aunt May's life, and it reset only Peter Parker's continuity, but not everyone's continuity. It made Marvel a mess. But unlike DC, they didn't micromanage it, and we're just kind of like, yeah, forget about it. Don't worry about it. It's basically, don't worry about it. We're not gonna have a crisis. Just put it out of your mind. But it was kind of insulting as a fan and as a fan of those characters that the creators were like, we can't tell stories with Peter when he's married. We can't tell stories with Peter when he has a girlfriend that's serious. We just can't. There's so many stories we want to tell that we can't tell with him in this situation. So even though I hated it and I hated the way they did it, you kind of look and see, okay, well, what stories, what exciting stories were there that they couldn't tell without Peter Parker being single and sad and living the worst life ever? And not really any of them. I don't think there was a single story that came out that's been something like that's a definitive, Spider-Man story that needed to be told and could only have been told if we sold our marriage to Mephisto. And I don't want to rehash something from 20 years ago in comics, maybe even longer than that at that point, but it feels like we're still going through this now in the books. Like it's still a thing. Like they're still teasing long-term fans. Like, oh, are they going to get together? Are they not? Are we going to apologize for this shit run of comics we put you through back in the day? That made me stop reading comics. That was the event that stopped me from reading comics. I went from spending $200 to $300 a month on weekly comic books to none, because I love Spider-Man so much. And that was so insulting as a longtime fan and reader that I just said, you know what? Fuck this shit. Why am I giving them my money? Why would I give them my money for that? And books weren't even $6 or $7 at the time. They were like, like $2, $3 at the time. So yeah, I just feel like we still haven't gotten Spider-Man right since then. That's going back a long ways, but we're still doing it, man. We're still doing it. I don't understand why Peter Parker's a jerk in this. I don't understand why he's not dating Mary Jane again, or why we have to go through this rigmarole with her now dating someone else. Surprise. I'm exhausted by it. I don't care. It's boring. Nothing happens. It's not a good jump on point. I don't understand what's happening, why, and I don't care. That's the worst part about it. I don't care. I just don't care. My favorite character of all time, brand new #1 jump on point, $6, and I don't care. It's not even that I'm like angry that I won't buy #2. Like, oh, this was terrible. I'm not going to buy issue 2, blah, blah, blah. I just don't care. I'm not gonna spend the money. I haven't read Spider-Man in so long, and I was hoping this would bring me back. And guess what? We'll maybe try another Spider-Man title sometime, but yeah, that's not the one, man. I'm probably going to go with a 1.5 out of 5, 1.5 out of 5. And the 1.5 is strictly coming from the art because it looks great still. Romita's art is still great for me. I know a lot of people don't like it. And that's it, man. Spider-Man #1, Amazing Spider-Man #1, the jump on point, the biggest Marvel book of the year. And it's not very good. So 1.5 out of 5. Now we're going to move on to our second book, the other big book that came out, the big second event, third, fourth, fifth event of the year for DC. Justice League #75, The Death of the Justice League. Oh no, the Justice League's dead. What's going to happen? No one ever comes back from being dead in comics. So this must be a terrible permanent thing that's just never going to get changed. Yeah. But, $6.99, so not cheap. Cardstock cover, great. Paper quality, great. And it's written by Joshua Williamson and pencils by Rafa Sandoval. So let's jump into it, man. The Justice League gets pulled into a big fight just out of nowhere. somebody is kidnapping all of them to bring them somewhere, and it ends up being, this is not spoilers, it's literally the first 2 pages. It ends up being some other superheroes that I don't know who they are or why they're there, but apparently it's the Justice League incarnate. I do recognize Captain Carrot as one of them, but they do tell you who they are. There's the President Superman, so the black Superman, but I don't think it's the one they're going to make a movie about, but it's the one from the comics. So Black Superman, and then there's a couple other characters. They explain to you pretty quickly, what's going on and why he had to gather these heroes. I'm going to be kind of vague because, again, spoilers. I'm not trying to spoil the book for you, but it descends into a giant battle. And it's not really a spoiler to tell you that it's the death of the Justice League. The main characters all get killed, and there's only one survivor who arrives back on Earth to warn the other DC heroes, who now like the BCD characters, what's happened and what's coming their way, to be continued in Dark Crisis. So what did we think of this? Right off the bat, the art's fantastic. Again, this is our second DC book where the art's been fantastic and kind of what I want to see from a comic book. I'm going to try to find a page that's not a spoiler of stuff that's happening. I don't know. It's kind of hard to. Everything that's cool that happens later on is kind of a spoiler. But I mean, here's an example. President Superman is kind of explaining. There's a lot of word bubbles. Don't get scared. He's kind of explaining, what happened and stuff like that, and what's brought this whole thing upon them. And the art's fantastic. It's all widescreen, huge action, exactly what you want. So no complaints whatsoever on the art. But we're looking at another DC story, which is technically a prologue to another story. So this seems to be an ongoing struggle for DC. We had it with Deathstroke that we read. We had it with Flashpoint Beyond Zero that we read. So, and I didn't end up really liking those because they just felt like it should have been the first 15 pages of the next issue and not a $7 comic, especially for $7. I mean, that's a lot of money to plop down on the table and say, give me one comic book, $7. The story's awesome. Surprise. They do a great job of explaining to you everything you need to know. As long as you know enough about like who these basic characters are that are in the Justice League, not all these people up here, but your basic Justice League characters, you're fine. That's it. That's all you. Everything else you need to know is easily and quickly explained to you in the story. This is a pretty complicated story involving the multiverse, other versions of characters, tie-ins from everything all the way back to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And by maybe about page 6, we're off and running, and it's badass, kick-ass action all the way through from there. I was really surprised. I was not expecting it to be that good a book. I was kind of expecting this week's books to be flip-flopped, actually, with this being trash and Spider-Man being awesome. And it's really the other way around. Again, DC, when they want to, knocking it out of the park. When they remember they have cool, iconic characters and they can put them in these big, widescreen, fun action comics. Not that this ends on a fun note, everybody dies, but the story is compelling and you're interested and you want to see where this is going to go. I don't think anyone's under any illusion that these characters are going to stay dead. They will probably be back by the end of Dark Crisis, but it's interesting and it's cool. And what's going on in it has me hooked. I'm going to pick up Dark Crisis, and that's what we're looking for from these things. Are we going to get the next issue? And the answer for this one is yes. I'm going to go with a 4 out of 5 for Justice League 75. Worth the $7. That's a crazy statement. This was a $7 book, and you know what? It's worth it. I felt like it was worth it. Maybe you can get a cheap issue, read on Comixology if you don't have $7. But I would say go to your local comic shop and throw the money down, because I'm telling you, this was worth it. I really liked it. A lot of cool action, really cool art, and it sets up the oncoming story in Dark Crisis well, but not making you feel like you wasted the money on this. And that's perfect, man. That's what we've been looking for. 4 out of 5. Justice League 75. And that's it. those are the two books I bought this week. I would have bought more books, maybe another one, but that was $13 right there. And that's a lot of money to spend on comic books, especially when gas is as expensive as it is. So 2 books, Amazing Spider-Man #1, not so much, a 1.5 out of 5, but Justice League 75 with the death of the Justice League, 4 out of 5, a definite recommend from me. And I got to tell you, it's getting kind of scary right now because right now DC, who I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I've got Marvel stuff all over the room here. There's a little bit of DC down by my shoulder there, but DC's putting out some good stuff, man. World's Finest and this Dark Crisis Death of the Justice League thing is pretty cool. We'll see if Dark Crisis shakes out and is good. I mean, it could end up being trash after a few issues, but just for this one issue that's putting us into it, I'm all in. I'm all in on that. So that's going to do it, man. That's our comic reviews. Like always, leave a comment below if you agree, you disagree, any comics you think I should be checking out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, the like, and the bell so you know when more content is coming your way. Tons of interviews, reviews, and more. The weekly podcast every week where you find podcasts with tons of movie reviews. And we're coming up on 8 years of doing it. So if you like things in your ear when you're on the treadmill or something, check it out. Otherwise, I have been Joey, and that's going to do it for this week's comic reviews. Good journey.